Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world one book at a time.
It's great to be back.
Today, we're turning the lens a little closer to home. We usually look at these huge, sprawling systems, economies, institutions, digital
At
networks.
micro scale.
Exactly, the macro scale. But today, we're analyzing the system that's running inside your own skull. We're diving into a book that tackles a phenomenon I think every single person listening has dealt with, probably in the last day: procrastination.
Oh, absolutely. It might just be the most universal crisis in perception there is, on that individual level at least. Just
Okay.
that maddening gap between what you know you should do and what you actually end up doing.
That gap is a canyon sometimes, and the source material we're using to map that canyon is a book by Aiden Nolan called Time is Money. Now, I have to put a huge disclaimer right at the top.
Yes, this is important.
Because our listeners are systems thinkers. They see a title like that with a subtitle about curing procrastination, and their mind immediately goes to the self-help aisle. You start picturing some motivational guru yelling about hustle and grinding.
Which is, to be absolutely clear, not what this is. We are not doing a pep talk today.
No. No life hacks, no slogans. We picked this book because it treats the problem like an engineer would. We're looking at it as an architectural blueprint of our own cognitive wiring. What really grabbed me about Nolan's approach is that he never, not once, frames procrastination as a character flaw.
He frames it as a structural design problem.
Right. And that shift in framing is, well, it's everything.
It is, because if you see it as a moral failing, if you tell yourself, I'm lazy or I'm undisciplined, you're basically just shaming yourself.
Yeah.
It's like yelling at your car because the engine won't start.
But you haven't checked if there's gas in the tank.
Exactly. You're trying to fix the wrong thing. But if you see it as a system error, a misalignment between different components, then you can actually open up the diagnostic panel and debug the code. Nolan's whole argument boils down to this. Procrastination is a predictable biological outcome.
It's not a bug, it's a feature, a very old feature.
A very old feature that's now colliding with a very new world. It's a clash between our ancient evolutionary hardware and the modern environment we've built.
It's a hardware-software mismatch. We're running Stone Age brains in a world of supercomputers.
That's the perfect way to put it. So the mission for this deep dive is to really unpack that mismatch. We need to get into the different layers of the cognitive system, identify the specific routing errors that happen when information comes in, and show how the solutions Nolan proposes aren't just clever tricks.
They're engineering patches.
They're engineering patches. They're designed to bypass very specific threat detection alarms that are hardwired into our biology.
Okay, so let's start with the central analogy the book uses, because I think it frames the entire discussion perfectly. And I have to admit, it made me feel a lot better about my own struggles with this stuff. Nolan compares a person to a high-performance car, a Lamborghini to be specific.
The Lamborghini analogy. It's so simple, but it's incredibly powerful for reframing the problem.
He says, look, the difference between someone who's a superachiever and someone who's a chronic procrastinator, it's not the engine.
No.
They're both Lamborghinis. They both have that V12 potential. The raw horsepower is there.
Right. The direct quote is something like, the truth is that you are a Lamborghini. The only thing you're missing is the air in the tires.
Let's really dig into that, because that's a radical idea for most people. When we can't get something done, our immediate assumption is, my engine is broken. I'm not smart enough. I'm not capable enough. I don't have what it takes.
And that, right there, is the crisis of perception. You're misdiagnosing the system. A Lamborghini with 4 flat tires is, for all practical purposes, useless. It's actually worse than a bicycle.
A bicycle will win that race every single time.
Every time. And if you don't understand mechanics, if you don't know what a tire is or what air pressure does, you look at this incredible machine that's just sitting there and you assume the engine must be dead. You might spend years trying to fix the engine, trying to fix your laziness, when the actual problem is just the tires.
You're working on the wrong part of the car. So in this analogy, the engine is our raw intelligence, our potential.
Yes. Your engine is your rational mind, your creativity, your ability to plan and strategize. That's the thinking brain. The tires are the systems that translate that power into forward motion.
Our behavioral regulation system.
Exactly. Your emotional regulation, your focus, your ability to manage discomfort. If that system is flat, if it's miscalibrated, the engine can rev all it wants. You'll make a lot of noise, you'll burn a ton of fuel, you'll feel exhausted, but you won't move an inch.
That feeling of revving but not moving, That is the experience of procrastination. That's a perfect description.
Spinning your wheels.
So let's pop the hood. Let's look at the mechanics. The book breaks down our cognitive architecture into a three brains model. I think a lot of us have probably heard versions of this before, the lizard brain idea.
The triune brain theory, yeah. It's a simplification, of course. The brain is massively interconnected. But as a model for understanding this specific system conflict, it's incredibly effective.
So he stacks them in a hierarchy. What's at the bottom?
At the very bottom, the foundation, you have the brain stem. Nolan calls this the reptile brain.
The basement.
The basement. It's the oldest, most primitive part. It handles all the unconscious stuff, your breathing, your heart rate, body temperature. You don't have to think about it, it just runs. But the key function for our discussion is how it categorizes the world.
It has a very, very simple filing system.
Extremely simple. It sorts all incoming data into one of four folders, the 4F.
Food, fight, flight.
And procreation. That's its entire worldview.
So when it looks at an email from your boss,
It's asking, can I eat it? Do I need to run from it? Do I need to fight it? Can I mate with it? If the answer is no to all four, it's basically invisible to the reptile brain. It doesn't care about your TPS report.
it's a pure survival machine, and it operates only in the immediate present.
The immediate now. We're talking millisecond by millisecond.
Yeah.
It has no concept of next week's deadlines.
Okay, so that's the foundation, the reptile brain. What's the next layer up?
One floor up, you have the middle brain, or the mammal brain. This is the limbic system. This is where emotions live, where memories process, social hierarchies are formed.
And its operating system is a little more complex, but still binary.
Still very binary.
Yeah.
It runs on one simple calculation. Pain versus pleasure.
Avoid pain, seek pleasure, the foundational driver of all mammalian behavior.
Absolutely. And this is where a key actor in our drama resides. The amygdala. Nolan describes the amygdala as the alarm system of the brain. It's the smoke detector.
And what triggers that smoke detector?
Pain. But we have to be really clear about what the mammal brain defines as pain. It's not just getting physically hurt. It's fear, anxiety, boredom, uncertainty, confusion, social rejection, overwhelm, any form of discomfort.
So a big, complicated project you don't know how to start.
That's uncertainty and overwhelm. The amygdala tags it as pain. The alarm starts to ring.
Okay, so reptile brain in the basement, mammal brain on the ground floor. What's in the penthouse?
The penthouse is the thinking brain, primate brain, the neocortex. This is the newest, most evolved part. It's where logic, language, and long-term planning happen. This is the part of you that has an ego, an identity. It's the part that says, I really should finish this report so I don't get fired next month.
Right, it understands future consequences.
It's the only part of the brain that does.
Now, this is where it gets fascinating, because this was the structural insight that, for me, changed everything. We like to think that the primate brain is the CEO.
We think we're rational beings.
Yeah, we think, I have a logical thought, and then I decide to act on it. We think it's a top-down process.
But structurally, that's completely backwards. And this is what Nolan calls the bottom-up processing problem. It's a critical routing feature of our biology that has become a major bug in the modern world.
Okay, break that down. What does that mean, bottom-up processing?
It means that every single piece of information from the outside world, everything you see, hear, touch, it has to pass through the lower brains before it gets to the thinking brain.
It has to go through security in the lobby before it can get to the CEO's office.
Exactly. Let's use that example of the email from an angry client. The light from your screen hits your retina. That data travels along the optic nerve. Where does it go first?
To the basement, the reptile brain.
Right, the reptile brain glances at it. Not food, not a predator, not a mate. It says, not my department, and sends it upstairs. Now it arrives at the mammal brain.
And the mammal brain is the emotional security guard.
It is. It scans the email for emotional content. It sees the angry words. It accesses memories of past conflicts with this client, and it immediately tags the whole situation as pain, as a threat.
The alarm bell starts ringing.
The amygdala fires. And this is the absolute key to the whole system. When that alarm goes off, it can trigger what's called an amygdala hijack. It pulls the biological emergency brake. It starts flooding your system with cortisol and adrenaline to prepare you for fight or flight.
Before the thinking brain has even had a chance to vote.
Before the thinking brain has even finished reading the first sentence, the data has to run the gauntlet of the lower brains, and if it gets flagged by the mammal brain, the CEO on the top floor might get the memo eventually, but the building is already in lockdown.
The sprinklers are on, the security doors have slammed shut.
And the CEO is sitting up there saying, hey, everyone, calm down. It's just an email. It's not a saber-toothed tiger. But it's too late. The mammal brain is already in control of the building's systems. It's running the show. You can't outthink a chemical flood.
This is the absurdity of it all, isn't it? We have this ancient life or death survival hardware, and it's being triggered because we have to do the dishes.
Or make an awkward phone call. Nolan literally lists things like vacuuming the house or feeling indecisive as potential triggers. The mammal brain sees effort or uncertainty, and its simple calculator just reads pain. The alarm goes off.
And once that alarm is ringing, willpower is useless.
It's offline. The thinking brain, the seat of willpower and logic, is effectively sidelined. You can't reason with a fire alarm. You can't stand there and have a logical debate with the sprinkler system about whether the fire is really that bad.
This completely explains why the advice, just do it, is so infuriatingly useless for someone who's stuck.
It's like telling someone having a panic attack to just calm down. You are appealing to a part of the brain that is not currently in control of the vehicle. Just do it is a message for the primate brain, but the mammal brain is the one with its hands on the steering wheel, and it is driving you in the opposite direction, away from the perceived threat.
So you're in a biological civil war, and logic is not going to win against biochemistry.
Not in a direct confrontation. The alarm system is faster, it's more powerful, and it has direct access to your body's chemistry. This is why Nolan says we have to stop trying to fight it head on. We have to design systems that work around it.
Okay, so let's talk about that design. The system is hardwired to avoid pain and seek pleasure. That creates a very specific incentive structure. And it seems our modern world is almost perfectly engineered to exploit that incentive structure to keep us stuck.
It creates a powerful, self-reinforcing feedback loop. Let's trace the full cycle. So the trigger happens, you think about that big, scary project.
The amygdala fires, you feel a wave of anxiety. That's the pain signal.
Correct. The mammal brain screams, danger, abort, get away from this feeling. So what do?
You grab your phone, you open a social media app, you check the news, you get up and go to the fridge.
And what happens to the anxiety?
It vanishes instantly. It's immediate relief.
Okay, now let's analyze what just happened from a systems perspective. That's the critical part. You experienced a negative stimulus, anxiety. You performed an action, avoidance by distraction. The negative stimulus was removed. Your brain just gave you a reward for procrastinating.
Wow. So you're training your own brain, like Pavlov's dog. The bell rings, you salivate, the anxiety hits, you reach for your phone.
You are literally training yourself to fail. You are reinforcing that neural circuit. Every single time you do that, you are adding another layer of myelin to that pathway in your brain, making the connection faster and stronger for next time.
So the habit of procrastination isn't just a behavior, it's a physical structure being built in my brain.
Yes. And Nolan points out that large, abstract, or vague tasks are almost guaranteed to be read as threats by this system. A goal like write a book is terrifying to the amygdala.
Why?
Because it requires immense effort, which is pain. It's filled with uncertainty, which is fear. And the reward, the pleasure, is maybe years away. The mammal brain does that simple math. A lot of pain now for a tiny chance of pleasure way in the future, and it concludes, this is a terrible deal, abort mission.
So the system is actually working perfectly. It's just optimizing for the wrong variable. It's optimizing for short-term safety instead of long-term success.
It's a short-sighted algorithm. It's designed to save you from the tiger of the scary spreadsheet right in front of you. But in doing so, it condemns you to the much bigger danger of losing your job next month. But the mammal brain has no concept of next month. It only knows right now.
This brings us to the core practical solution in the book, the 3x15 method. Now, when I first read this, I was a little skeptical. It sounds like another version of the Pomodoro technique, work for a bit, take a break. We've all heard that.
Right. On the surface, it seems very similar.
But given everything we've just discussed about the amygdala and this threat detection system, there has to be a deeper mechanical reason why this specific structure works. What's going on under the hood?
The difference is all about the threat threshold. It's about the intensity of the signal you're sending to the mammal brain.
Okay.
If I tell you your task is to clean the entire house, your amygdala sees a giant, monstrous task. It's overwhelming. It's a tiger. The alarm goes off before you've even picked up a sponge.
It trips the sensor immediately.
But if I tell you your task is to work for just 15 minutes...
That seems trivial. Almost laughably easy.
And that's the whole point. Trivial is the goal.
Yeah.
15 minutes is so small, so non-threatening, that it flies under the amygdala's radar. The mammal brain looks at 15 minutes, and its calculation is different. It thinks, A, I can survive anything for 15 minutes. That's not a threat. That's not a tiger, it's a kitten.
So it doesn't pull the emergency brake.
It lets the signal pass through to the thinking brain. The CEO gets the memo and is allowed to get to work. The 3x15 method isn't really a time management technique. It's a stealth mission.
You're sneaking the work past the guard dog in your own mind.
That is a perfect visualization. You're using a Trojan horse, you lie to the guard dog and say, don't worry, this is just a tiny little task, and you wheel it inside the gates. That's the first mechanism. It lowers the friction to starting. Nolan talks a lot about inertia.
The physics of productivity. An object at rest stays at rest.
Exactly. The static friction is always higher than the kinetic friction. It takes way more energy to get a heavy box moving than it does to keep it moving. By making the initial commitment ridiculously small, I'll just do 15 minutes, you overcome that initial static friction without triggering the alarm.
And once you're in motion,
Momentum takes over. The funny thing is, you'll often find that after the 15-minute timer goes off, you don't even want to stop. You're in the flow. But you had to trick your own brain to get there.
the method is specifically 3 blocks of 15 minutes with breaks in between. And there's this other little detail that Nolan insists on, which at first I thought was kind of silly. After each 15-minute block, he says you have to physically check a box.
Yes. Or color in a square.
Mm-hmm.
Or write a little note like, good job, next to it.
It feels like something you do in elementary school. Why is that physical act so important to the system?
That's the second part of the system hack.
Mm.
Engineering the reward loop. This gets back to mapping the actors. You have the rational brain, which wants to get the project done for long-term gain. And you have the emotional brain, which wants to feel good right now. The checked box is a tiny little treat for the emotional brain.
It's a doggy biscuit for the mammal brain?
It is. It's a microdose of dopamine. It's a tangible signal of progress. Your mammal brain doesn't understand making progress on the quarterly report. That's too abstract. But it understands, I did a thing, I got a check mark. That's a win. It feels good.
So you're creating a positive feedback loop right at the moment of action.
You're immediately rewarding the desired behavior. And this brings up a massive point the book makes about how habits are actually formed. He says habits are formed by rewards, not just repetition.
That cuts against so much common wisdom. It takes 21 days to form a habit. Just grit your teeth and do it.
That assumes repetition is the key. But Nolan argues that repetition without reward is just a form of self-punishment. The chemical that actually cements a new behavior in your brain is dopamine. Dopamine is the save button for a new neural pathway. When you get that little hit of dopamine, your brain flags the action you just took as important and worth remembering.
So if I drag myself to the gym and I hate every single minute of it and the whole time I'm thinking this is awful and I come home sore and miserable, I'm actually making it biologically harder to go back tomorrow.
You are actively training your brain to avoid the gym. You are creating an aversion. Your mammal brain logs it as gym equals pain. The next time you even think about going, the resistance from your amygdala will be even stronger.
So we have to bribe ourselves. We have to become our own best trainers.
We have to consciously engineer rewards into the system. Nolan is very specific about this. He talks about primary versus secondary rewards. Primary rewards are the basics: food, safety, sex, warmth.
The stuff the reptile brain cares about.
Exactly. Secondary rewards are symbols that represent those things. Money, a notification on your phone, a check mark on a list, social praise, and the reward has to be something your own mammal brain actually values.
This is where he brings up the celery versus cake standard, which is a great little concept.
That's a fantastic point. If you're trying to bribe your inner mammal, which, let's be honest, has the intelligence of a clever puppy, you can't offer it a currency it doesn't care about. If you hate celery, telling yourself, after I finish this difficult chapter, I'll treat myself to a stick of celery, is not an incentive.
It's an insult.
It's an insult to your own neurology. The reward has to be genuinely stimulating to you. For some people, that's 5 minutes of the video game. For others, it's a piece of chocolate. For others, it's watching a YouTube video. It has to be cake, not celery.
This connects to a formal principle from psychology that the book mentions, something called Premack's principle. I'd never heard the term, but the second I read the description, I knew exactly what it was.
It's a cornerstone of behaviorism.
Yeah.
It's elegantly simple. It just says you can use a high-frequency behavior, something you do often and enjoy, to reinforce a low-frequency behavior, something you tend to avoid.
So translate that.
You link something you want to do with something you need to do. The classic example is a kid who wants to play video games, high frequency, but hates doing homework, low frequency. The parent doesn't say, do your homework because it's good for your future. That's a primate brain argument.
It won't work.
It won't work. The parent says, you can play video games for 1 hour after you finish your homework.
You're making the reward contingent on the work. You're creating a system.
A dependency chain. And as adults, Nolan argues we have to do this for ourselves. Our instinct is to try and ban our vices. I will not go on social media today. That's an act of will, of deprivation.
It rarely works.
Because it requires constant energy. Instead, Nolan says use the vice. If you love scrolling Instagram, that's your high-frequency behavior. That's your currency. That's your cake.
So the rule becomes, I will work on my project for one 15-minute block, and then I get 5 minutes of guilt-free scrolling.
Precisely. You've transformed the distraction from the enemy into the payment. You're hijacking the dopamine from the distraction and using it to power the work. This is so critical because if you just try to rely on pure willpower, on just white-knuckling it through the day, you inevitably run into the willpower battery problem.
The idea that willpower is a finite resource, this is where I think so many of us go wrong. We think we should have an infinite supply of discipline.
Treat it like a moral virtue instead of a biological resource. Nolan, and the research he's citing, treats willpower like a tank of gas or like muscle energy. Every decision you make, every time you resist a temptation, every time you force yourself to focus, you're burning fuel.
So if I sit at my desk for 3 hours and I spend that whole time fighting the urge to check my email or look at my phone, but I don't actually write a single word, I'm still exhausted.
You're exhausted because you've been burning fuel just to stay in place. You've been revving the engine in neutral. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, your tank is empty. And what happens when the willpower tank hits empty?
The primate brain, the CEO, just goes home for the day.
It clocks out. It loses its executive function, its ability to veto the impulses of the lower brains. At that point, the mammal brain and the reptile brain take over completely. They operate on pure instinct and emotion.
This is why you can be good all day eating salads and being productive, and then at 9 p.m. you find yourself eating ice cream out of the carton and watching junk TV for 3 hours.
It's not a failure of character, it's a failure of fuel. Your primate brain has literally run out of the glucose it needs to function. It has left the building, and the inner toddler is now in charge.
This all leads to something the book calls the failure loop, which is a pretty dark, but I think very accurate description of the procrastination spiral.
It's the cycle of avoidance and shame that so many people get trapped in. Let's walk it through. Step 1. You try to do a task, relying on that finite willpower.
The tank runs dry, you fail to complete the task, you procrastinate.
Now comes the critical moment. Your subconscious mind, your mammal brain, records that failure. It creates a memory that says, see, we tried to do that thing and it was painful and we failed. That task is dangerous.
And then, to make it all worse, our primate brain's inner critic kicks in. We start the negative self-talk. I'm so lazy, I'm useless, what is wrong with me?
The punishment error. We think this self-flagellation is motivational. We think we're whipping ourselves into shape. But Nolan points out the actual neurochemistry of what's happening.
What's it doing to our brain?
Shame, guilt, and negative self-talk deplete your brain's supply of dopamine and serotonin.
Wait, hang on. So by beating myself up to try and motivate myself to focus, I am chemically removing the very neurotransmitters I need in order to focus.
You are. It's the most counterproductive strategy imaginable. You're draining the battery faster while screaming at the engine to go. Healthy focus and motivation depend on having adequate levels of these chemicals. Punishment drains them. So the more you shame yourself for procrastinating today, the more biologically difficult you make it to focus tomorrow.
That's a physiological downward spiral.
It is. You are digging the hole deeper with the very shovel you think is going to get you out.
That's heavy. But it explains so much. It explains why sometimes the harder you try to force it, the worse the block gets. It makes sense of why conditions like depression and chronic procrastination are so often linked.
It also explains the persistence of the problem. This is the ultimate frustration for smart people. They think, I read the books, I understand the psychology, I know why I'm doing this, so why can't I stop?
Because knowledge doesn't refuel the tank.
Because knowledge is in the primate brain. And intellectual understanding does not change the underlying incentive architecture in the mammal brain. You can have a perfect PhD-level understanding of how an internal combustion engine works, but if the car is out of gas, that knowledge will not make it move. The alarm system is always faster than your rational understanding of it.
I want to zoom out for a second. We've been focused on the internal system, the wiring of the brain, but Nolan makes it very clear that this internal system doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's interacting with massive external systems.
Our caveman brain isn't living in a cave. As you said, it's living in a world of supercomputers. Or maybe a better analogy is, it's living in a casino.
The house always wins.
The house is designed to win. This is the ultimate crisis in perception. Our entire modern digital environment has been engineered by incredibly smart people using these exact same principles of neuroscience to weaponize our own biology against us.
The book uses the term monetized distraction.
The internet, and social media in particular, is described as a dopamine machine. It is a slot machine you carry in your pocket. It offers an endless stream of immediate, novel, low-effort rewards. Every swipe, every click, every notification is a little pellet of pleasure for your mammal brain.
And compared to the dopamine hit from a new notification, the reward from writing one paragraph of a difficult report is
What?
basically zero.
Worse than zero. It's a net negative in the short term. The work is effortful, pain, while the internet is effortless, pleasure. So the mammal brain looks at the two options, and it's not a hard choice. It's making the most logical decision based on the immediate incentives available.
You offer a dog a juicy steak or a dry biscuit, it's going to take the steak every time. The internet is an infinite steak buffet. Our work is the biscuit.
A very dry biscuit. And Nolan makes this really useful distinction between two types of attention, passive attention and active attention. Understanding this was a game changer for me.
Okay, what's the difference?
Passive attention is when you are pulled along. You're a passenger, scrolling a feed, watching a movie, listening to a podcast. The content is doing the work of holding your focus. Active attention is when you have to voluntarily direct your focus. You're the driver, writing, studying, problem-solving, deep reading.
And the argument is that our digital environment is constantly training us for passive attention.
It's building our passive attention muscles, while our active attention muscles atrophy from disuse. It's like spending all day being pushed around in a wheelchair. Your ability to walk on your own gets weaker and weaker. If you spend hours every day letting algorithms decide what you look at next, your capacity to direct your own mental spotlight begins to fade.
It's a skill, and we're losing it.
A cognitive muscle that is getting weaker. This is why the book takes such a hardline stance on tools like website blockers. He doesn't just say try to have more self-control.
No, he says that's a losing strategy. He says to install the software, build the wall.
Because it comes back to the willpower battery. Resisting the siren song of the internet costs energy. Every time your phone buzzes in your pocket and you don't look at it, you've just spent a tiny micro unit of your daily willpower budget. You're paying a cognitive tax.
And if you have to pay that tax hundreds of times a day,
You're cognitively bankrupt by lunchtime. And you haven't even started your real work. A blocker eliminates the tax. If the distracting site is blocked, there's no decision to make, there's no temptation to resist. You've outsourced your discipline to the machine.
you're preserving your willpower for the things that actually matter. It's an environmental modification. You're accepting that in this specific battle, the enemy is stronger than you, so you change the terrain of the battlefield itself.
It's a strategic retreat.
Yeah.
You're acknowledging the reality that a multi-trillion-dollar industry is better at hijacking your brain than you are at defending it. So you build a fortress.
There's another layer to this that's really important, which is identity. We talked about the punishment error, but the book goes deeper into how our primate brain, our ego, attaches our sense of self to the outcomes of our work.
The ego raises the stakes of everything. If a task is just a task, like take out the trash, it's low stakes. The threat level is minimal. But if the task becomes a referendum on your worth as a person, like write the novel that proves I'm a brilliant artist, the stakes become terrifyingly high.
And that massive increase in stakes amplifies the amygdala's threat response. It turns a manageable task into a monster under the bed.
Exactly. This is how the book analyzes perfectionism. It's not seen as a noble pursuit of high standards. It's a fear mechanism. The perfectionist's inner dialogue is, if I can't do this perfectly, I will be judged as a failure. I will experience the pain of social rejection. So the amygdala, hearing this, slams on the brakes. The safest strategy is to not start at all.
If you never turn in the paper, you can't get a bad grade.
If we don't start, we can't fail. Procrastination becomes a form of self-protection. To bypass this, Nolan suggests a system he calls the 80% rule,
Which is basically giving yourself permission to be mediocre.
to do a B- job.
Yeah.
You consciously tell yourself, my only goal here is to get this to 80% good. I am aiming for good enough, not perfect.
It lowers the threat profile.
It completely deflates the stakes. It reassures the alarm system that this isn't a life or death situation. And the beautiful irony is that once you get started under that lower stakes premise and you get into a flow state, you often end up doing great work anyway. but you had to lower the bar to even get out of the starting gate.
This all ties into another big idea in the book, the shift from time management to energy management. This feels like a very 21st century concept. For 100 years, we've been obsessed with optimizing our time.
That's the legacy of the factory. It's the industrial model. On an assembly line, your time directly equals your output. Your energy level can fluctuate, but as long as your hands are moving for 8 hours, you produce 8 hours worth of widgets.
But for knowledge work, that's not true at all.
For knowledge work, your energy is the primary variable, your creative energy. You can sit in a chair for 8 hours, and if your brain is fried, produce less than zero value. You can actually make things worse.
So managing our calendars is less important than managing our willpower battery.
Tracking your hours is the wrong metric. Nolan says you should track your energy. He talks about understanding your own biological rhythms. Are you a morning lark or a night owl? Your willpower tank is fullest at different times of the day. If you're a lark, trying to tackle your most difficult, intimidating task at 4 p.m. is strategic suicide. You are choosing to fight the final boss when your character has 1 HP left.
And what about the role of breaks in this energy management system? The book is really insistent on them. Real breaks, not just switching from one type of work to another.
He uses a weightlifting analogy. You don't build muscle while you're lifting the weight. The lift is the stress that tears the muscle fiber. You build muscle during the period of recovery after the lift.
The rest is where the growth happens.
Right. If you just kept lifting for 4 hours straight with no rest, you wouldn't get stronger. You'd just injure yourself. The brain's cognitive muscles work the same way. The 15-minute work block is the lift. The 5-minute break is not just time off. It is essential recovery time to replenish the neurochemicals that fuel your willpower tank.
So trying to power through when you feel drained isn't a sign of grit, it's just a sign of a bad strategy.
It's structurally unsound. You're just grinding your mental gears down to nothing.
Okay, let's really connect this to the present day. We live in the notification economy. Every app, every service is fighting for a slice of our attention.
And every notification, every ping, buzz, and badge is a micro-interruption. It's a tiny signal to your amygdala. It could be a reward, a like on your photo, or it could be a threat, an urgent email from your boss. Your brain doesn't know which.
So it has to stay on alert.
It keeps your amygdala in a constant state of low-level arousal, a state of chronic, low-grade fight or flight. We are constantly scanning our digital environment for threats and rewards, just like our ancestors scanned the savannah for tigers and berries.
This makes deep, focused work not just psychologically difficult, but physiologically difficult.
Yes, your body is in a state of simulated danger. It is biochemically primed for distraction, for scanning, not for single-pointed focus. This is why procrastination is so rampant today. It's a predictable outcome of the environment we've created.
So if you're listening to this and you're struggling to focus in the modern world, the takeaway is not that you are broken.
You are not broken. You are a perfectly functioning biological organism reacting normally to an extremely abnormal environment. You are a caveman in a casino, and the house is piping oxygen onto the floor to keep you playing the slots.
As we move toward the end of our analysis here, the book really culminates in this idea of reframing agency. It's a shift from a mindset of forcing behavior to one of designing behavior.
It's the difference between using brute force and using strategy. Forcing is trying to push that Lamborghini with the flat tires up the hill by yourself. Designing is stopping, analyzing the system, and realizing you just need an air pump.
It's about working with your biology, not against it.
It's asking the right questions. Where is the friction in this system? Where's the incentive misaligned? How can I lower the threat? How can I increase the immediate reward?
And he puts a lot of emphasis on the power of micro wins, like establishing a morning ritual.
Yes, the ritual he suggests is wake up, drink a glass of water, meditate for a few minutes, and then do one single 3x15 block of work on your most important task. The task itself almost matters less than the act of completing the ritual.
Why is that so powerful?
Because it breaks the failure loop on day one. You start your day with a success loop. You send a powerful message to your subconscious. See, we made a plan. We executed the plan. We are capable. It begins to rebuild the trust between your conscious and subconscious mind.
And it gives you a shot of dopamine first thing in the morning, which refuels the tank for the rest of the day.
Exactly. It sets the chemical conditions for success.
The book also makes a point to say that successful, highly productive people aren't some different species. They don't have a special gene for willpower.
No, they are not biologically different. Nolan's argument is that what they do have is better systems. And crucially, he says, successful people plan for failure.
What does that mean?
They don't assume they will wake up every day feeling motivated and disciplined. They assume they will be tired, that their mammal brain will try to sabotage them, that they will fall off track. So they build systems that work even when they don't feel like it. The checklist, the timer, the website blocker, the pre-planned rewards.
They've built a scaffolding around themselves. The system carries the load when their individual willpower inevitably falters.
That's the perfect metaphor. The system is the scaffold.
So to synthesize this entire deep dive, if we see procrastination not as a character flaw but as a signal,
It's a warning light on the dashboard of your brain. That's all it is. It's telling you something about the system's calibration.
it's indicating that either the perceived threat of the task is too high or the perceived reward is too low and too far away.
The alarm is too loud or the reward is too quiet. That's the diagnosis.
So when that light comes on, the solution isn't to yell at the driver, it's to look at the dashboard.
It's to be the mechanic. Ask the engineering questions. Is this task too vague? Is it too big? Let me shrink it down to 15 minutes. Is the reward too far off? Let me add an immediate reward right after. Am I just out of fuel? Let me take a real break. Adjust the mechanics of the situation. Don't blame the person in the driver's seat.
That is a profoundly liberating way to look at a problem that causes so much guilt and shame for so many people. It turns a moral crisis into an engineering problem.
And engineering problems are solvable. It lets you step out of the courtroom where you're on trial and into the workshop where you're just tinkering with a machine.
Before we wrap up, I do want to leave our listeners with one final thought to chew on, something that builds on this framework. We've spent this time talking about how we can build our own systems to manage and bypass our own biology.
Right, building our own internal scaffolding.
But the external systems we interact with every day, the social media algorithms, the advertising platforms, the news feeds, they are getting exponentially better at hacking our biology than we are at defending it.
That's a very sober-minded point. The external algorithms, in many ways, know your reward loops better than you do. They have more data. They know exactly what content will trigger your amygdala, exactly when to give you that dopamine hit to keep you engaged. They are becoming expert drivers of your mammal brain.
So the question becomes, if those external systems are driving your mammal brain, who is actually driving your Lamborghini?
Who's in charge? The race is truly on. We have to learn our own operating manual and learn it fast before someone else writes a new one for us without our permission.
A critical question for our age.
An essential one.
We have to leave it there. This has been a deep dive into the system outlined in Time is Money by Aiden Nolan.
It's a very practical, very mechanical guide to a complex biological problem.
If you want the full schematics, we highly encourage you to check out the book. Full credit to Aiden Nolan for this framework. Please read the book or borrow it from a library.
It is absolutely worth your time.
This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind crisis and perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a shorter visual overview of this topic, see the mini explainer linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening.